Erastus, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate you creating time to be here.
Thank you so much, Gladys, for having me. I appreciate much.
I'm excited because we'll be talking about all the opportunities that you've been creating intentionally for students and for young professionals, including Startup Africa. And then perhaps towards the end, you will also tell us about your own personal journey. I understand you are based in the US, so you will tell us how you got to the US, what are you doing there, are there opportunities for young people, and all the other nice things that we'll touch. So let's start. I met you, I think we've been mostly interacting through Startup Africa. You invited me to be a judge, and I really appreciate that. I was judging the 2024 Olympiads. So tell us about Startup Africa. What inspired you to start it? Why? And tell us about all the things that you do under Startup Africa. Take it away, Erastus.
Absolutely. So again, Gladys, thank you so much for inviting me to speak about something that is close and dear to my heart, and that is Startup Africa. Startup Africa is a non-profit organization whose mission is bigger than we, the human beings. We dream big, we try to do big, and we have done big. And I say all that because when I look back how Startup Africa was started, it was because of the 2007 post-election violence. As we remember, it was a very dark moment for our country, Kenya. I happened to have been there. My own family was affected. But really the highlight of what drove Startup Africa to be was meeting a group of youth from Kibera who were trying to go to Uhuru Park through Upper Hill, where I was staying, and chance to meet them and decided to have a conversation with them. And as I asked them, were they not afraid of being arrested, or being shot, or being killed? Almost in unison, they said they did not care. And when I asked them why, one of them looked at me and said, look at me, I have a degree in engineering from University of Nairobi. And for 2 years, I've been trying to find a job. And Baba had promised us employment if he gets elected as president. Now that he's not going to be president, I've lost hope. When you say those words, they stung, because hope is that one thing that keeps us going. It is the thing that makes us wake up in the morning. Is that thing that makes the farmer in an arid area wake up, go to the farm to dig, despite the fact that they don't know when the rain is coming, but they have that hope that the rain will come one day and they'll be able to grow their crops and be able to harvest. And truly, to me, that's the point when I said I need to do something, and the need to do something led me to tap into my own experiences here in the US, especially a program I had participated in for young leaders, where essentially they taught us that, if you see a problem, you try to find a solution for it. And I tapped into that and say, I'm going to find a solution. That solution led to me to do research, reading, talking to different people. But in the long run, it was this gentleman who invited me to an annual business conference at the Wharton Business School at University of Pennsylvania. And in that conference, it's an annual conference, there was a panel on entrepreneurship. So as I listened to panelist after panelist talking about entrepreneurship, the power of entrepreneurship, I said, this is it. I need to teach our young people how to be fishermen and fisherwomen versus giving them the fish. If they can learn to solve problems that they see every day in their communities and turn some of those problems into opportunities themselves, and they'll be able to create jobs for themselves. And essentially, that's how Startup Africa started. And we ended up engaging a group of MBA students to do a research for us. And after semester-long research, their first recommendation was, if you are truly going to make a difference, start working with young people in high school. So our very first program in 2013 was a high school entrepreneurship program, where students in high school form teams of 4 and a teacher or a community mentor. And then they start working on finding a problem in their school, in their village, in their county, in the country that they feel they can solve. And they work from ideation. They start working on their solution. By the time they are done, they have put together a business concept. Those business concepts are then in turn reviewed or evaluated online by a team of judges, and then they help us get the top 20 that are invited to the international competition. So really, that's how Startup Africa started, and we have been growing since then.
Amazing, amazing. And thank you for elaborating how it started. And you mentioned about the high school students, and I know you've now expanded to TVET. The competition that I talked about earlier, it was for TVET students.
Yes.
Tell us more about it. Yes, how, was that the first edition for TVET?
For TVET, no, that was first one was 2019 in Rwanda, and then because of the pandemic, we had a break. 2022, we were in Zimbabwe. 2023 in Ghana, and then last year in Kenya. So that was the fourth one.
Wow! So it involves all of Africa.
Yes,
as the name suggests.
Yeah.
What countries are you mostly working with, and how, if students in the continent, if they want to be involved, or their teachers, what is the best way to learn about the upcoming events?
So number one, I would definitely encourage them to make sure they visit our website, startupafrica.org, and then also follow our social media pages, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We are very active there. We usually post whenever we have opportunities that are coming up. And essentially, that's how we promote the upcoming activities. So, for example, right now in Kenya, there is ongoing registration for high school's event, which is going to take place in May. Same thing in Uganda. They're already in the process of putting together their registrations for the month of August. So it happens in different times of the year.
And tell us about the countries you are working with. Is it open to any country, or are there particular countries you have contact with?
Actually, all countries in the continent of Africa are open to participating. And I will look, especially during the pandemic, I met a gentleman who was moderating a session on youth entrepreneurship in Africa. We ended up connecting, and one of the things that we have done, because he's now an advisory board member, Startup Africa, is create the Startup Africa Innovation Oscars, essentially meaning we are taking the best of the best innovations, ideas from students across Africa, from high schools, TVETs, and universities, and bringing them under one umbrella, under one roof for a full week, for them to learn through boot camps, mentorship, and eventually they get a chance to pitch. And if they win, they are able to get cash prizes that they can take back home. But more, it's not about the winning, but it's about the learning. It's about connecting these amazing innovators, entrepreneurs, youth and innovators and entrepreneurs from Africa, so that they can learn that they too can solve the problems that Africa is facing today by collaborating across the borders. Because many times we hear about the East African community, SADC, ECOWAS, etc. But really, it's in the political space, like level. But the people down here, like the students, they might hear about maybe a teacher talking about it, but what does really that mean? So let's take an example of East Africa, the East African community. How many of our young people have crossed the border to Tanzania or to Uganda just to visit or do a joint activity with their peers? And that is, for us, we believe that if we're truly going to harness the opportunities that the continent has, then we have to start with the young people, because across the border they can collaborate. We have seen the power of technology now, how they can be able to do it. And I always look at a good example where 2018, 2019, we brought students from a historically black college, Medgar Evers College in New York, to Kenya for an exchange program. When they were there, they connected with their peers at Kenyatta University, and they got to see what Kenya is doing in terms of entrepreneurship. And today, there are 3 of them who have benefited from that exchange program. They are doing business because they were inspired by that visit to Kenya. There was one girl, for example, who was looking for an app. To do the app or to develop the app in New York, lots of money. But when she came to Kenya and she presented that as her challenge, because the students were talking about what challenge are you dealing with in your innovation journey. So for her, she said, I have this business idea, but to get the app is a challenge. So the Kenyan students laughed and said, we can build that for you. And they ended up building the app for her. She entered a competition for colleges in New York. She won $10,000 and she's happily running a business using that app developed by young people in Kenya. So that's the power that we at Startup Africa see, that if we're able to connect these young people to collaborate, to learn from each other without thinking that you're from Uganda, you're from Rwanda, you're from Burundi, but say we are young Africans. Whatever problems you might be dealing with in Congo or Ghana, most likely we're dealing with it in Kenya. So how do we take this opportunity and collaborate and work together so that we can be able to do a lot more together?
For sure, and thank you for touching on that. I wanted to actually ask you later, like what is one project that warms your heart? And I think you've already mentioned a few, like that shows the impact that you guys are creating, like real and tangible impact, where when you bring youth together and you help them in that kind of setting. Yeah. Erastus, so assuming I'm a high school student or a TVET student, I don't know if you do this in unis as well. So take us through the process. If I have an entrepreneurial idea, maybe even expound more on what entails an entrepreneurial or innovative idea. If I think I have one, what is application cycle like? So I put in application, what do you guys need? Then how long do I wait to get to know if I was elected or not? Just a brief summary of the whole process.
So the whole process very, very easy. So it starts, of course, with a call for applications, which we advertise through the website, through our social media pages, and through the net, some of the teacher educator networks that we have. So once you see that, like for example, I gave the example that Kenya, Uganda, right now they are registering teams for the upcoming Olympiads. So the goal is for the teacher now to take the initiative to say, I'd like my school to participate, especially for high school students, because they have to go through their teachers. So the teacher will say, would like my school to participate. And there is a platform that we call Skill Park Africa that we use for teams to register. So registration essentially requires them to have a team between 2 and 4, because we believe in the power of entrepreneurs, innovators working in teams. And then once they've done that, they register themselves with the information, name, phone number, email. And then essentially once they've done that, they start working on their project. And of course, taking into consideration the upcoming deadlines. And then once they've done, they submit, and then they just have to wait for the evaluation period to start. So really, the process is very easy. We have made it as easy as possible. So any person, whether they have a laptop or they don't, as long as they have a phone with internet, they can go to Skill Park Africa and a platform and be able to register themselves and participate.
Amazing. And you will share with me all those links, useful resources, yes, so that I attach to this video, and any student who is interested or a teacher can look it up and maybe apply. So now, Erastus, you had shared, if you can share also, I wanted to hear from your own perspective, just one standout project. I know you had mentioned the one for the entrepreneur in New York, but is there one that stands out to you concerning, like, say there is a problem in Africa? We have so many problems in Kenya and many African countries. And then there is this student who came up with something innovative, something that is sustainable, something that is tangible, like that can be actually effected in a real world. And maybe they're still running it. What project do you have such a project? And if you don't mind sharing, just something that made you like, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. I will speak about somebody you met, Eliud. If you remember Eliud,
yes.
Eliud was one of the judges. Eliud, for most people who might just see him as a judge, his journey started from Startup Africa when he was a high school student. And I think it was Kaheti boys in Nyeri. And so when they came to the competition, they won. They were supposed to travel to the US, but of course, with no passports, or getting passports was a challenge. So we ended up having them participate in the competition through the American Airlines Zoom. I think that time it used to be Skype. through the American Embassy in Nairobi. And after that, Eliud is this unique young man who kept in touch. Like in some way, he ended up finding my contact and he kept in touch. Even he said, just saying, I want to do something around tech and I want your support. So he kept in touch. We kept sharing information, or if he was working on something. So long story short, Eliud is now a founder of a tech company as of last year. And for him, again, looking at his own journey, the passion that he has for tech, he said, this is what I want to do. And he believed in himself. And from time to time, whenever maybe he had a challenge, he would call and say, hey, I'm trying to connect with a lawyer. I'm trying to connect with this person. But again, in the journey of entrepreneurship, you cannot be afraid. You cannot be scared. And that's one thing I like about Eliud. He was not scared. Like if he had something to achieve, he said, I'm coming after you, Gladys, because you have something, you have a skill, or you have a person that I need to connect with. And so last year he launched his company. And it's interesting that even after he launched, I think it was in June when we were doing the national competition for high schools in Kabarak University, he was one of the judges again and speaker. And more importantly, he used his first profit, $500, to empower the students at Startup Africa. So essentially, he donated because he said, because Startup Africa helped him get to where he is, then he believes he has to give back. And that was his way of giving back. And that's how you actually ended up seeing him in Naivasha for the TVETs as well, because for him, he believes that he has been given much through Startup Africa, and his is to give back as well. I think the last time I spoke with him, maybe November, he told me he had maybe 20 employees that work under him, like from tech, marketing, etc. So that goes to show you that if you have an idea, if you follow through your journey and keep getting the support that you need along the way, then definitely success awaits you. Don't be that kind of entrepreneur innovator who hits a roadblock and then you give up. Because even for me, when I look at Startup Africa, there are many times I could have said, forget it, I'm not getting anything out of this. But for me, I always look back in 2007. Those young people that I met, and I always remind myself that I have a mission to fulfill. I have an Eliud to create. I have this group of girls from Taita Taveta, Kajire Girls High School, who came to a competition in the US because their idea was centered around solving the problems of elephants attacking their community. And when they came to the national competition that was held in Elgeyo Marakwet, they were the last ones to take the stage, and they ended up wowing the judges and everybody because they said, we are tired of elephants attacking us from the national park, because sometimes apparently when the elephants leave the forest, they can wreak havoc. They have killed people in some cases, and the idea was just a simple one, we have this sensor which is going to be put up in an electric pole, but that sensor is able to track the movement of elephants from the forest as they're coming into the village, and it's able to send signals to people's phones so that they know that there's danger coming, their elephants are coming, let's take shelter. And it's also able to notify the Kenya Wildlife Service people so that they too can come, because they know how to control the elephants and return them back to the forest. So that to me are some of examples of young people that I've seen practically taking the ideas and being able to implement them. And the journey by itself, like I said, it is one that does not require people who are afraid or people who are going to give up just because they have run into a small challenge.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing about those two examples. I think I read definitely about the Taita Taveta girls, and I met Eliud, so I can attest. And also just sitting in that judging panel, the innovations that the students were presenting, I was wowed so many times, like with the limited resources, but then like their minds are crazy. They are boiling with ideas, and most of the time they just need support, little support. And you guys are providing a lot of support for that. And so that is really commendable. So Erastus, let's talk about, I wanted you to touch on how can Kenyans or Africans in diaspora who are constantly, I know some of my friends who are constantly seeking ways to give back to the continent, and maybe they like the Startup Africa mission and they want to be involved. I want you to touch on that. But before you touch on that, mention about the innovation in aviation industry. You talked to me about it and I found it very interesting. That is upcoming. So talk about that. And then tell Africans or Kenyans who are in diaspora and they want to be involved to support you guys, how can they do that?
Absolutely. So again, one of the things that I've learned in my stay in the US, when you find opportunities that can benefit somebody or a community in Kenya, in Africa, tap into it. So this aviation and innovation conference really came because I was attending a conference and I sat on a table during lunch with a gentleman. We started a conversation and then we exchanged contacts. In the evening, he reaches out to me and says, "Hey, I just checked your website. You're doing some amazing work with young people. I'm in aviation. My wife is in aviation. Can we explore something we can do together?" So we ended up arranging another meeting, a lunch meeting. We ended up meeting like for 2 hours. But by the time we were done, we had committed that we wanted to tap into his own network in aviation and what Startup Africa is already doing, working with young people, creating opportunities for young people to have jobs, so that this knowledge that they have, these networks that they have, can be brought to Kenya. So he ended up, after that, introducing a colleague of his, is also going to be one of the speakers, who has this training program for aviation, because the aviation industry, especially when it comes to its workforce, is one that is going to evolve different places to Nairobi or to Mombasa. Then they don't have to come with their own engineers and other staff, but staff can be locally trained that can benefit, that can serve these airlines that come into Kenya. So that's training. So for us, Startup Africa, and shared about her wish to go into aviation. And she lives in Kwale, and she said every time a plane comes to land in Ukunda, she runs and climbs this tree with hopes that she can catch a glimpse of this aeroplane. And then, of course, we were not able to help her. I tried to help her at that time, but I was not able to get the right people. So when these gentlemen told me about what they want to do, the training, I thought about her. I went, I found the letter, and I started scouting for how to contact her. And luckily, she had written her school's address. I reached out to somebody who went to that school. They were able to locate her. And as we speak, we have connected with her. She's not in aviation. She ended up doing something different. But the beauty about that is number one, she's going to be at the conference. That's number one. Number two, it is people like her, when I think about the future of aviation, even though I'm not in aviation myself, when I see all these opportunities that I've learned from these colleagues of mine, and the more they explain, the more I'm like, why are we not doing this? You know, like the other day, I think this week, I was speaking to a young man from Colombia who I met at a conference in Spain, who also is doing some amazing things in aviation. And they want to bring these great initiatives to benefit the young people of Kenya. So for me, I'm saying it is all in the power of sharing knowledge, connecting with the right people, so that an event like that one, the conference itself, the Aviation Innovation Conference that we have end of next month, is just not another conference, but it's a conference that is going to empower, educate, and when it comes, for example, to professionals, we don't want them to sit at the conference for 2 days and then go back home. We are actually going to take them to the field, to some schools, to exchange knowledge, to talk to the students, because we know we cannot have all the students from all the schools coming to the conference center, but because we'll have those professionals with us, we are asking them that, are you available for 1 hour, for 2 hours, to go to a school on the second day of the conference to talk to students about their careers? Because it is in sharing that somebody will be like, wow, I want to do this one day. You know, how did you get to reach there? Or how did you become a pilot? Or in your case, like the work that you've been able to do very well, how did you get there? What was your journey? So those stories are the ones now coming into how can the diaspora support? The diaspora, for me, I've always seen them as a rich, untapped resource. And maybe sometimes some of them are not informed, or maybe there is that sense of apathy where they know something is important, but they really don't care. But for me, I always say all of us have to care. We might not be in Kenya right now, but the fact that we were born, raised, schooled in Kenya, we have an moral obligation to see what we can do to give back to that country and the continent by extension. Because sometimes people say, but I don't have the money. It's not about the money. It's about the skills, the knowledge, the networks that you have. Like I always tell people, I'm not a millionaire, but I'm a millionaire when it comes to the skills, the networks that I've created over the years, because I can tap into these networks and be able to do things on behalf of young people in Kenya and other parts of Africa. So for the friends from the diaspora who are listening, there is so much that we can do together. Next time you are catching a flight to go to Kenya, consider that primary school, that secondary school that you went to, or that church where you used to go as a young person. Reach out to the pastor, to the imam, to the principals of those schools and say, I'm a former student. I'm coming home. Can I come and visit and talk to the students? I've done that randomly in a few schools in Kenya. Like I'm driving and then I see a school. I just stop and talk to the principal and say, can I talk to the students? And most principals are always looking for these opportunities where professionals can talk to their students as a part of their mentorship. And doing that is a way of empowering. Like I remember one time we were driving in Homa Bay, and then we saw Asumbi Girls. Asumbi Girls is a very popular school. So I said, can we go in here? I was with my friend, said, sure, why not? So we show up at the gate, we tell the askari, well, we'd like to see the principal. Of course, the ushers us in. We go, we meet the principal. I've forgotten her name, Sister somebody. So she listens. She's like, okay, I'm going to get the students. Like, just like that. 1,000 girls came and sat on the grass, and we shared about Startup Africa, what we do, how we got to where we were. And I always remember this girl who raised her hand during the Q&A and said, based on what I've had you share, my dream is to create a multi-million-dollar technology company one day. That girl, as we speak, is at JKUAT studying IT. So who knows? She might be able to create that multi-million-dollar IT company. But the fact that we were there and we planted the idea on our mind is good enough. The seed has been planted. How it's watered is up to her, and other people can support her. So to the friends in the diaspora, there is so much we can do together in your visits when you go back home, visiting your former schools, your church, and other places. Connect with us. There are young people always who are reaching out for mentorship, mentors. If you'd like to sign up as a mentor, please visit startupafrica.org, or you can send us an email at info@startupafrica.org, and we'll be able to connect you with some amazing young people who are doing amazing things, and all they're looking for is a big brother, big sister who's willing to listen and share with them.
Amazing. And you inspire me, Erastus. I think I've told you already. And especially your passion for the community and just being intentional and constantly looking for ways to support other people, to create opportunities for students. Super commendable. And actually talking about that, you received head of state commendation, right? Is that correct? Was that in relation to what you do at Startup Africa? Tell us more about it.
Yeah.
And well deserved, actually. Well deserved.
Yeah, so this was random. All I know is I got a phone call one time from the Kenyan embassy in Washington DC saying that I was being considered for that award. They asked for some information. I sent, and then months later they said, "Oh, you're the winner. You have gotten the head of state commendation." It happened under former president, the late Kibaki. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. How did you feel about it being recognized for the work you do? Did you attend? Did you go receive? Is it the medal? Do you get a medal, or what do you get?
Yeah.
Yes. During is it Madaraka Day? Ama Jamhuri.
Jamhuri. I think it happens in December or forever. But I know that, yes, they had invited me to travel to Nairobi to go receive it, but I could not. At that time, I could not because of work. Yeah, so I ended up getting the medal later from the embassy in Washington, D.C.
Yeah. How did you feel about it?
I think number one, I was like, is it a joke?
Why?
Yeah, and then I was like, okay, I guess as we do these things, we don't know who's paying attention, and truly that's one thing that I can say. When we are called to serve, let's do a good job, because you never know who's paying attention. So it made me more bolder, more inspired with the work that we're doing, and said, if the Kenyan president can recognize this work and be able to give their word, then that means we are doing something important. So let's keep doing it. So for me, it's all about the motivation behind it. It's all about the amazing team that I work with that keep coming with ideas, keep inspiring me. It is thinking about the young people that can benefit from that journey. And I always tell the story that I was born, raised, and schooled in Kericho. My parents used to work in a tea plantation in Kericho called Tagabi. And being able to come from there and find myself in the US, number one, is something that I had never dreamt about. And then number two, being able to be recognized by the head of state in Kenya because of the work that I do, also something I never dreamt about. So I always say it is for a reason. And it's for this reason that for me, whenever I do what I do with Startup Africa, I keep doing more and more, because I know it's impacting somebody. And we might not be able to touch all the young people in Kenya or Africa, but if we're able to touch a few, like especially with the goal that we set for ourselves in 2021 during the pandemic, where we said, as an organization, we want to reach 10 million youth across the continent of Africa, in all the countries. And out of those 10 million, being able to have 1 million startups created from all the participants, and the 1 million startups creating 5 million jobs. We're on that journey. And so whenever I've shared that with people, they say, don't you think you're being overambitious? I'm like, no, we're not being overambitious, because this is a goal we have created and we know we are going to achieve. So, for example, since then, in 2021, when we set to do this, we were just in a few countries. But now, as of December last year, we were in 40 African countries. 40 African countries are running Startup Africa programs. And that to us is a sign that we are heading somewhere. We've created the partners and we are working with them. And then also number two, being able to look that by the end of this year, which is the goal, the timeline we had set for ourselves, to be able to be in all the African countries by the end of 2025. And then 2026 to 2030, that's now where we're going to do the real work. Right now we are doing the work in a small scale, but it's because we are preparing the ground. We are making sure the weeds, there's enough fertilizer and everything in terms of partners from non-profits, government, corporates, etc. So that 2026, 2030, then we actually get to do the work, because now we know that in every country we have a partner. It could be a non-profit, it could be a university, it could be a Ministry of Education. And that is essentially how we are going to achieve the 10 million goal.
And all the best, Erastus. In fact, you answered the question that I was going to ask you about ambitions for the future. And it's good you are laying the ground, because one thing I also know is that many players it would be very easy for people to plug in, be it government, non-profit, once they see something running and something as important and as critical as whatever you are doing at Startup Africa. So all the best with the ambition. And it's just to say again, really commendable. It's not, I know, like you mentioned, it's not something easy. You could be doing something else with your time, but you decided to create opportunities for young people, and I know they appreciate, and definitely there is an impact there. So as I don't know, is there another, I know you run so many projects. Any other projects you want to talk about, especially that are geared towards like young people, students, young professionals? And then if there is no other projects, then I want to just hear, like just briefly, your own personal journey. We'll get another session to go to dive in deeper into your personal, academic, and life journey and career. But then just take us through, tell us other projects if you have. If not, just summary of how did you find yourself in the US? What are you currently doing there? Yeah, and anything else, anything else along those lines.
Yeah, I would say the other projects also tied to what we do. One of the things that I love doing is opening doors for students to visit other countries. When I was doing my undergrad studies at the University of Delaware, I was one of 10 students from different universities in the US that was selected to travel to East Africa for a program called East Africa Uongozi Institute. And being able to be shortlisted to join these amazing students and being connected with students from University of Nairobi, Makerere, and Dar es Salaam for 7 weeks, lectures, community service, and engaging with different stakeholders, for me was an eye opener on the possibilities that are there in Africa. And after that, out of the 10, I was one of 3 that was selected to receive an opportunity to do an internship anywhere in the world that we wanted to go to, fully paid for 3 months. I chose to go to Ghana, spent 3 months there doing an internship at the Ghana Center for Democracy and Development, because at that time I was very interested in immigration, especially migration from West Africa into Europe, in the US, etc. Because I used to dream that one day I wanted to be a professor, and my area of study was going to be migration. But that to me ended up as Startup Africa started to say, what kind of difference would it make for us to be able to take these students from their schools into another country, so that they can get to see that beyond what they are seeing in their schools, in their villages, in their counties, then there are other opportunities out there. And we created a Startup Africa Entrepreneurship Exchange Program where we take some of the best students from the national event. We bring them to the US, usually between 10 and 15 days. And when they come, they get to visit universities, they get to visit businesses, nonprofits, they get to interact with American families, and all in the spirit of opening their eyes. There is nothing as important as exposure. That is why even something as simple as one time we were hosting the high school national event at Kenyatta University, and I remember during a break, a group of students came and say, "Can we take a tour of the university?" So for me, it's not something I thought about, but for them, they're like, "We're at a university." So, of course, I had to seek permission from our contact person. He was gracious enough, Dr. George Kosimbei. He was gracious enough to get some buses. The buses took the students around the university, and then they came back. But when those students came back, you could see like joy in their faces, And then I said, "How was it?" "It was good. It was amazing. And then I remember one of them asked the question, "What do I need to do in order to join this university?" Dr. Kosimbe said, work hard, get good grades, select this school, etc. And as I look back, I think 2 years ago, one of those students, I'd totally forgotten about that incident, but one of those students, she's from Narok County, she reached out to me through our website and said, I might not remember her, but she participated in a program, and she ended up joining KU for a bachelor's in education, and now she's a high school teacher. And she was inviting me to her graduation because she said, because of what I did to them, she dreamt about working hard and joining college. So that exposure, for example, for us, we might say, who wants to go to a university to visit? But I say it is very important because that is where the students' minds start getting open. And imagine, so now you're taking them from Kericho or Bungoma, etc. You're bringing them to Nairobi. You're giving them a different perspective, Now imagine taking them from Nairobi or Kenya to Uganda or to the US, just like we have done. Imagine what goes through their minds, And I'm so happy to report that some of those students who have come to the US for study have ended up coming back either on full scholarship, partial scholarship, and they're studying here. And to me, that is a joy that I always look back and say, because we open doors through Startup Africa, these young people are now here. They're studying, they're pursuing their dreams, and that to me is what I like.
Amazing. Definitely. I'm sure you might not get all the testimonials, but I'm sure millions of students you are impacting. Excellent work there. Okay,
Thank you.
Erastus, now, yes, tell us about thank you for sharing about that project, but then give us a summary of how did you find yourself in the US? When did you travel to the US? And I suppose that was from Kenya. You relocated from Kenya to the US. How did that happen?
So I always used to dream of studying journalism, because as a young man in high school in Londiani, I used to dream like I wanted to be like Kwendo Panga, Tom Shindi. Those were great journalists of those days. And so I remember we used to take the blackboard in the evening before preps. And myself, Duncan Mutai, Steve Omondi, we could divide the blackboard and we could write, like maybe, because we didn't have a school newspaper, so we could write there. So my brother started seeing the things I was writing. He was already in the US. He said, you should come and study journalism. Of course, he had also studied journalism in New Jersey. So I said, sure. So we ended up working with him after 3 tries of trying to get the American visa to come to the US. I finally succeeded, and I ventured into the US to study journalism. Of course, I never studied journalism, though I always say that one day, maybe in my retirement, I will go back to school and study journalism. But I ended up doing something totally different. That's international relations, and for my undergrad, and a master's for my public administration for my master's. But really that was the journey, from being inspired by my brother who said, oh, you're writing very well, you should consider journalism. I guess he was biased because he was a journalist himself, but being able to follow through and coming to the US and continuing to pursue that education. The journey itself can be tough, especially when you go to that embassy. You never know, they can turn you away 10 times, but if you ever think of doing it, do it. Don't give up. I never gave up. I went once, twice. Third time when I went, they did not even ask me for the information they wanted. The lady just asked me, where are you going? What are you going to study? Tell me about something you have written lately. And luckily, a few months earlier, I participated in a writing contest by the Writers Association of Kenya. And my entry, which came number 3, was called Fallen Angels. I was talking about street children. So I told her about the fallen angels, who they are, yada. And then she was just sitting there listening. And then at the end, she asked me, are you coming back to help them? I said, absolutely. So she smiled. And then she said, your visa is approved. And she didn't look at the bank statement. She didn't look nothing. So I always say, do something. If you're out there just sitting at home, think about going out there to volunteer at your local church, your local hospital, mentor some kids, tutor some kids, so that you can have a story to tell. Because having been in the US, we like stories. We like good stories that have a good ending. So have a story that you can tell, so that when you're there, you don't just have your degree in your hand and nothing else that you can share with the person who's interviewing you. And also, more importantly, one thing I can tell people who are considering applying, communication skills are priceless. Communication skills are priceless. Don't get there and you're looking down and that person is addressing you. Give them eye contact, speak loudly, let them hear you. If they try to say no, ask to explain yourself. Most of those people are human beings. They will want to listen to you. Don't just say, okay, they have said no, let me get. No, ask to explain yourself, and you will never know why that story you're going to tell about how instead of sitting at home idle waiting for a job, you decided to turn your living room at home into a tutoring center for the kids in your village, so that they're learning. You're helping them because their parents maybe never went to school. But you, because you've gone to school, you're the one who's empowering and giving information to these kids so that they can succeed when they go back to do their KCPE or KCSE, etc. So for me, that's the message I would leave the listeners, and say, do something for yourself, live with a purpose, and more importantly, think about how you can give back, because in giving back, we end up receiving a lot.
Amazing. And you know what, Erastus, you just reminded me of a very important conversation that I've been planning to have, and I think we will have, and that is about visa and about students I've received so many DMs. Like students, they go there and legit, they have admission, they have all these things lined up, and they are so surprised that they were refused the visa. And I was refused. I applied for my first UK visa because I studied in the UK. It was refused, and I had to reapply. And so many. And thank you for being vulnerable and sharing the 3 time, like you tried 3 times. I think it's important, and I'll get another session. I will definitely have another session. Maybe you look for we look for someone else, and we have a round table on some of these tips that you've mentioned that are very important about communication skills, about looking them in the eye, because then if you look down, the officer might think you are lying, and most of these transferable social things that we take for granted a lot. And yes, so definitely we'll have another session to talk about F1 visa or the student visa for students who are planning to go to the various embassies sometime this year as they prepare to leave for their graduate or undergrad programs abroad. So I'll schedule a time for that. But thank you for sharing, Erastus.
Oh, welcome.
So, because of yes, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I wanted to say, just because of time today, I just wanted us to talk mostly about Startup Africa and all these opportunities for students and young professionals. And thank you for chatting about those. I want you to reflect back to Londiani High, and I think this is timely because we have new KCSE candidates in Kenya. So reflect back to when you finished at Londiani. I think you were 17, 18, around there. And the journey you've traveled and all this impact you are creating, amazing impact. And I know a bit of your story because I think we've shared. So when you look back to that young Erastus from Londiani High, what is one lesson or what will you tell that Erastus?
I would say, very, very good question. I would say really, for me, I think when I look back at, number one, they are bringing the parents who never went to school, but they still believed in education. They said, go to school, work hard, it's going to help you one day, And even though my dad passed away when I was very young, my mother still believed that she has to invest in us. So she made sure that we still had our uniform, our school fees was paid, and all those kind of things, because she believed that one day this education will help you. And surely when I look back, it has helped. And going to Londiani and eventually after Londiani, just having that dream that one day, like I want to be somewhere, I want to study journalism, and eventually that dream coming to be is something that for me, I'll never take for granted. And I always joke with people, I say, when I came to the US, I had a small bag and $80 in my pocket. And they say $80, even to the point where when I landed in JFK in New York, the immigration guys pulled me aside. They're like, where's your luggage? We've never seen somebody just coming with, so I had to explain and say, my brother had already prepped me and said, if they ask, just say you're going to buy your clothes here. So you did not see the need of carrying a big bag, But of course, I had my admission letter and all those kind of things, So when I look at that journey itself, and I also tap into the growing up, the messages that had been instilled by my mom and other older people in the community, I always think that they were grounding us and preparing us for the future. Coming into the US, for example, I think it was 6 months into being here. US can be tough. I arrived, it was snowing. Those days we used to get a lot of snow, until it could cover your car. So I remember coming and it was the beginning of February, lots of snow on the ground. So I'm just sitting at the window and just watching these white stuff falling from the sky and wondering. And then, soon my brother said, welcome to the US, Now you have to start thinking about you going to school, how you're going to get your money, I'm like, huh? I thought this is something you want to sort out. It's like, nope, you're on your own now. I'll just show you the ropes. And I thank him, for showing me the ropes and eventually being able to do. But one of the things that as I look back to the person that I am today, it is as a newspaper article that I read 6 months into being in Delaware about a boy who shot a woman with a gun because she had made a comment about a bicycle I was riding. So for me as a newcomer from Kagabi, Kericho, thinking about a gun and a boy could not connect. Because growing up as a boy, we never saw guns, we never saw cops, the police. So I'm like, what is this boy doing with a gun? So I asked my brother, I showed him the newspaper article. He looks at it, throws it on the table and says, "Welcome to America." And he continued watching TV. I'm like, huh? But for me, I was like, I really want to get an answer. So I took the newspaper article, put it in my school bag. When I went to school, I asked my advisor, Dr. Helen Williams. I said, "Dr. Williams, I have a question for you." So I showed her the newspaper article. She says, "Have a seat." And then she says, "Erastus, I know you came thinking that we are a paradise, but just like your country, we have our share of problems. Homelessness, teen pregnancy, unemployment, HIV/AIDS." But she said, "But Erastus, you can make a difference." And then on a small piece of paper, she wrote the names of two organizations, Big Brother, Big Sister, and Boys and Girls Club. And she told me, these two organizations help young people like the one you're reading about in the newspaper. Have a good day. Long story short, ended up joining the Boys and Girls Club as a tutor and helping kids with their homework. And as they say, the rest is history. So I am so happy that my brother said, "Welcome to America" that day, because I did not say that, maybe I would never have gone to see. Volunteerism, as I know it today, was introduced to me, and it's something that has continued to shape my life, my career, and everything that I do.
And thank you for sharing. I've really enjoyed listening to those stories. We should definitely have another session where you tell us more of those personal career and education stories. But asante sana, Erastus, for creating time. All the best with Startup Africa and all these other opportunities and programs you are running.
Thank you, Gladys, for having me, and looking forward to connecting again soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye, thank you.